Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of Pauper Ponderings. But before we start, I just wanted to go ahead and let you guys in on a couple of things that we're going to be doing here on the channel. The first thing that we want to be doing is a giveaway for 2 prints. So this is the first print here. So I have this Delver of Secrets print, as you can see here. Now I also have this Insectile Aberration print. So they're pretty big. I'll put the exact specifications down in the description of this video, but it's very simple to be entered to win these 2 prints, basically right in time for Christmas. I'm going to be raffling them off, not next Pauper Ponderings, but the Pauper Ponderings after that. So this is episode 3. The winner will be announced episode 5. So make sure to be entered to win either one of these prints, 2 separate draws. Make sure you comment down below what your favorite Pauper deck is right now. So if you do that, you will be entered to win either the Insectile Aberration print or the Delver of Secrets. So again, make sure you comment down below, tell your friends, tell your family, comment. Each comment is going to get you one entry per YouTube user per video. So you'll be able to enter 2 times for yourself. If your mom or your sister, whoever want to enter, that's fine too. But yeah, I figured I'd let you guys know that as well. We're getting close to, I think, 100 subs. Hopefully we'll have it by the time this video is up. That'll be great. That allows me to make sure I have a custom URL on YouTube. So if you could give a sub to this video if you like it, and if you do like this video, give it a like. So thanks guys, and let's get into the episode. Alright guys, so here we are. This is Gruul THICC Boys. We're basically trying to utilize the abilities of Sakura Tribe Scout and Arboreal Grazer to kind of benefit us from playing a bunch of different bounce lands. So we're playing 4 copies of Gruul Turf, 4 copies of Golgari Rot Farm, and then those in conjunction with Arboreal Grazer letting us play an extra land every turn, Sakura Tribe Scout letting us play a land every turn, and then Explorer letting us play an extra land every turn. It's going to basically turn these lands into kind of like a pseudo-ramp card advantage engine. We've seen this a lot in Modern with the Amulet Titan deck. That's kind of how they get ahead, is using these cards to their advantage, and we're going to try to do that today. Now, we also have some removal spells in the form of Lightning Bolt here, and 3 Fiery Cannonades. So, again, kind of this new toy that Commander Legends has given us. Fiery Cannonades, 2 in a red for an instant, deals 2 damage to each non-pirate creature. Very, very powerful spell, and I'm hoping that it's going to allow us, as a kind of a slower deck, to keep up with the faster, more aggressive decks in the format. Now, we also have 3 Reap and Sow. This is kind of an interesting card, but I wanted to give it a try. The player who sent me this deck, he had this in the deck, and I don't see why you wouldn't have it. It's kind of interesting. It allows you to find any land, which is nice. The fact that you can go and get a bounce land with this thing is pretty decent. We also have 2 copies of Adventurous Impulse. Just a solid card. It's going to allow us to hopefully find a bounce land if we don't have one. Maybe find a Sakura Tribe Scout, or Arboreal Grazer if we don't have one. Or find a big guy if we don't have one. Then we have 2 copies of THICC Rebel Fort, which is one of the best cards to hit off of Cascade, because it allows us to, again, give all our creatures haste, and that's really, really powerful when we're dealing with, you know, big 7/7s and 6/5s. So going over to the THICC Boys, we have 4 copies of Annoyed Altisaur, so it's 5 green for a 6/5, with Reach and Trample, and then it has Cascade. So the way Cascade works is when you cast Annoyed Altisaur, you flip cards off the top of your library until you hit something with less converted mana cost, and then you immediately cast that spell. So again, 7 mana 6/5 Reach Trample is going to be already pretty good. If we can turn that into also maybe an Aurochs Herd or a Reap Soap, that's going to be really good. We then have the Mondo THICC Boy in Maelstrom Colossus, so it's 8 mana for a 7/7 with Cascade. This also allows us to cascade into Annoyed Altisaur, and if you've kind of played older formats before, you know that if you cascade into a Cascade, you cascade again. So in a perfect world, we could go Maelstrom Colossus into Annoyed Altisaur into Aurochs Herd. That would be the nuts, but that would be pretty sick, and that is something that you can do. And then finally, we do have Aurochs Herd, so this is 5 and a green for a 4/4 with Trample. And then when it enters the battlefield, you can look through your library for another Aurochs. So you can see that it's got creature type Aurochs. There's going to be 4 Aurochs Herd, and then when they attack, it gets +1/+1 for each other attacking Aurochs. So this card's going to scale really well when we get a bunch of mana into play. If we play 1, we're most likely be able to play 2. The next turn we'll probably be able to follow that up with 3 and 4. And if they have haste, that's a whole lot of damage. So, pretty straightforward deck, but a lot of power here. And I'm excited to see if an actual ramp deck is going to be good enough for Pauper. Because right now you kind of just see Tron as the de facto ramp deck, and I'm not exactly sure if you can build something like this, but just because Tron is so powerful and so, you're not necessarily consistent, but the things that it does, it gets to play blue cards, it gets to play those card filtering cards, basically gets to play any color it wants because of Prophetic Prism. Is it, you know, the de facto best deck, or can something like this come along now that we have, you know, these large creatures that have upside to play them? Before, other than Ulamog's Crushers, there's no real reason to play any other big guy. Now that we have these two large creatures with Cascade, maybe there's something here. Going over the sideboard, we're playing 3 copies of Red Elemental Blast, 3 copies of Flaring Pain, good against Tron, 2 copies of Gleeful Sabotage, 1 copy of Weather the Storm, 2 copies of Hush, 1 copy of Relic of Progenitus, and 1 copy of Bonder's Ornament. So, again, pretty standard sideboard. I'm pretty excited to see where this thing goes, and I'm excited to see if this is a viable strategy. I think this might be the best deck we've played so far in the new iteration of Pauper Ponderings, but game's got to decide that. Let's get going. All right, everyone, so welcome to Match 1, Game Number 1. Now, unfortunately, I had all of this ready to go with audio, live video, everything like that, like you guys requested. And unfortunately, all of the audio corrupted while I was editing. So next week, there will be live video. I swear, I promise, cross my heart. But in the meantime, we're going to play some Gruul THICC, boys. This is match 1. This is game 1. And I'd like to show you my hand here. So we're leading off with an Ash Barrens and an Oid Altisaur, an Adventurous Impulse, an Explore, a Golgari Rod Farm, a Forest, and a Sakura Tribe Scout. Now, we lead off with the Sakura Tribe Scout, and our opponent comes back with a Darksteel Colossus, or a Darksteel Citadel, and a Chromatic Sphere. We play a Ash Barrens and then cast Explore. The reason we cast the Ash Barrens is because we're just going to bounce it back to our hand after we put the Gruul Turf into play. So we put the Gruul Turf into play, bounce the Ash Barrens back to our hand, and we don't attack because the ability to put Golgari Rot Farm into play rather than 1 point, I think is way better in this spot. So our opponent plays an Atog. We assume that he's going to be on some sort of munitions, excess munitions, Ashnod's Altar type combo deck that I think has been circulating around a lot. Actually, a lot of people sent me that deck, and I was really close to playing it. I thought that it was maybe a little bit untuned, and I wanted a bit better deck, because I actually think that deck is really, really good, and I wanted to, when I did play it, hopefully put up a 2-1. I know, it's pretty huge for me. Put up a 2-1, maybe a 3-0, and I wanted to, maybe look at the decks a little bit more, because I think I got sent, 7 different ones. So the fact that, you know, I'm going to have an extra week to maybe play with a couple of the different deck lists you guys sent me. Again, thank you so much for sending me these deck lists. It's great. I love it so much. But anyways, again, if you want to send me deck lists, pauperponderingsmtg@gmail.com. It's down in the description, and then I'll put it again at the end of the video. Anywho, end of turn, we played the Golgari Rot Farm with the Sakura Tribe Scout, and then we went ahead and played the Tuk Rubble Fort, and then we Adventurous Impulsed for a Forest, and then shipped the turn. Oh, sorry, we basically land cycled for a mountain and then shipped the turn. Our opponent Galvanic Blast the Rubble Fort and then got in for 1. So here was an interesting decision. My opponent had Chromatic Star, Great Furnace, and then 2 Darksteel Citadels, and then he attacked with the Atog. I thought about blocking for a bit here. The reason I didn't was because if he wanted to sack lands, I was interested in sacking lands for 2 points of damage, because on my next turn I'm going to be playing Annoyed Altisaur, and that thing is going to get in the way. So if he deals me, 6-8 points of damage, then I'm going to have this 6-5 that's going to be able to get in the way. Hopefully it's going to bring a friend when it does come into play. So that's why I didn't block there. He does sack the Chromatic Star. It is free, basically. He gets to draw a card and deal me 2 damage. End of turn, I put a Forest into play. I untap, put a Mountain into play, and then play an Annoyed Altisaur. So this is going to come into play, and it's going to cascade into an Arboreal Grazer, so just a good blocker for Atog. And now I have a 6-5, and then here I get in for 1 point of damage. So I ship the turn. My opponent then casts a Mirror Enforcer and doesn't attack. Then on my turn, I draw Fiery Cannonade. So this is an interesting spot for me here, right? I have fiery cannonades, so in my mind, I really wanted to get both of his creatures off the table. And I thought the best way to possibly do that, or, you know, take 1 to 2 lands off the table, was going to be to attack, hope for the double block, put the Mernforcer in front, go to deal 2 damage to the Atog, and then when he sacked a land, I could fiery cannonade. It would kill my Sakura Tribe Scout, but it's going to either take the Atog off the table or kill 2 of his lands. So that's why I attacked here, and it ends up working out pretty well, because I actually take this trade. Like, any land here, and I'm in such good shape. So my opponent plays a Mernforcer and then ships the turn. I draw the Forest and cast the big boy in Maelstrom Colossus. It comes into play, and it cascades into a Lightning Bolt. We deal him 3 damage and pass the turn. Our opponent then passes the turn again. We put out another big boy, another Maelstrom Colossus. It and here's the actual nuts, right? We hit Maelstrom Colossus into Annoyed Altisaur. Basically, like, actually, back in the day in Shards of Alara draft, Cascade, that was where Cascade was first around, there was this card called Bituminous Blast. I've played it on Pauper Ponderings before, and it's 3 black-red to deal 4 damage to our creature, and it's an instant and has Cascade. Then there was something like, you know, Bloodbraid Elf, which is, you obviously know what that card is, 4 mana, 3/2 haste Cascade, and then any amount of 3 drops. So in the limited format, or even in the standard format, there was, people like to call it Bituminous Ultimatum, because you would cast it, deal 4 damage to a creature, cascade into a Bloodbraid Elf, and then cascade into something like Blightning, which is 3 mana, deal 3 damage to target player, and then they discard 2 cards. So this was kind of cool. This was the Bituminous Ultimatum, or you could call it Maelstrom Ultimatum of this deck. You get a 7/7, a 6/5, and then something else. But you can see how powerful this deck is. Bounce lands, as we know from Modern, really, really good cards. They're powerful, especially in conjunction with Sakura Tribe Scout and Arboreal Grazer. So huge that we were able to win this first game. I'm actually really excited as to where this deck can go, but we'll see. Looking for games 2 and 3. All right, so we're back here for game number 2. You can see here we keep a hand of Forest, Arboreal Grazer, Fiery Cannonade, Annoyed Altisaur, Sakura Tribe Scout, Maelstrom Colossus, and Gruul Turf. Anytime you have a bounce land with a Grazer and a basic, I think you have to keep that hand, and that's kind of what I do here. So I lead off with the Scout and Ship. So our opponent starts off on Thraben Inspector and then casts a Prophetic Prism. On our turn, we draw a Forest, we play a Gruul Turf. We then play a Arboreal Grazer, and now we get to end of turn put a Forest into play. So I'm actually feeling really good about our spot, especially with this Fiery Cannonade. So our opponent plays another Thraben Inspector, and then a Mernforcer. So that's not great for us, but again, I do like our spot. We're developing our mana pretty well, and I just think that we have a chance here. So we draw another Annoyed Altisaur, play our Forest for the turn, and then ship. Now, this is kind of the spot where you get not great. Like, we have 3 huge guys in play. Now, we're still at 20, but you can see, like, our opponent has so much stuff. They also have an Atog, and it's starting to get a little bit hairy. So our opponent comes in for 4, 5, 6 damage. We block and go to 15. And then we draw another Annoyed Altisaur. And that's definitely one of the downsides of playing a deck like this, right? You have the opportunity to draw a bunch of nonsense that you just can't cast. Here, we end up taking a bunch, and then we have to concede because there's no draw in our deck that gets us out of this. So, kind of an anticlimactic game 2, but we'll see what happens for game 3. All right, so for game number 3, we're on the play. So we decide to keep a hand of Forest, Lightning Bolt, Maelstrom Colossus, Golgari Rot Farm, Arboreal Grazer. Now, the reason I kept this hand is because Arboreal Grazer is good against his early aggression. It makes him have to, you know, either waste a card for Atog to get through it, or it can stop the Thraben Inspectors. We have double Bounce Land, which is good with Arboreal Grazer. We have a big boy in Maelstrom Colossus, and if any point we draw an Ash Barrens, a Gruul Turf, or our Mountain, these lightning bolts are going to be busted against him, and we have the Forest. So that was my reasoning for keeping this hand. Is this foreshadowing? I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We'll see. So we play our Arboreal Grazer, put a Golgari Rot Farm into play, and then bounce the Forest. And then we go ahead and ship the turn. Our opponent leads off on Ancient Den, Chromatic Star. On our turn, we draw another Maelstrom Colossus. So, you know, not looking great for the kid, but who knows? Any red source, we're in good shape. Our opponent misses their land drop, so we draw Explore. We're able to find a Golgari Rot Farm, then we play a Forest. So again, at this point, I'm feeling pretty good about this game, but our opponent leads with an Aurochs Sunchaser. We draw an Aurochs Herd, but we can cast that thing next turn, so again, feeling okay about the game. Our opponent then plays another Aurochs Sunchaser, so now he's got 2/3/3 flyers. Gets in for 3, and at this point, at any point, if we draw a red source, I just don't think we can lose this game. So on our turn, we draw a Forest, and then we go ahead and cast an Aurochs, which goes and gets us another Aurochs Herd. Next turn, we have Maelstrom Colossus available to us. So again, I'm feeling fairly decent about our board right now. He Galvanic Blasts the Aurochs Herd, and then plays a Chromatic Star, and then gets in for 6, putting us to 14. On our turn, we draw Fiery Cannonade, and we go ahead and play Maelstrom Colossus. And we hit Arboreal Grazer, which is good as it can block one of these flyers, and we have a 7-power guy. Our opponent casts a Navigator's Compass, which gains him 3 life. I was kind of scared it was going to let him cast Thoughtcast. He gets in for 6. We block. Again, just looking for any red source here. We draw for our turn. We draw a Tuk Rubble Fort, and then we go ahead and play another big boy. Just, again, trying to find anything. We find this Fiery Cannonade that really doesn't do anything in this spot. We get in for 7, put him down to 16. And yeah, you can see we just unfortunately now just get literally overwhelmed with 3 Mirrored Forcers. And we go down to 5, and now we're looking at a board of basically nothing. Really, really sad, the fact that we weren't able to pull out this game. It looked so good. But this artifact deck is so powerful. You can't really put a price on these just really aggressive flying creatures. We weren't able to get back in the game. We had a hand that I think was good, and I think I would keep that hand every single time, but obviously this time it didn't work out. You can see the power of this deck though. So moving forward, I am excited to see, what this deck can do. Maddie, what do you think? Good? Not good? Yeah. She doesn't really care. She's sleeping. She's liking the little ferns over there. I just added those. Those are pretty recent. Anyways, we'll see you for match number 2. Hopefully we have a little bit of better luck with our mana situation. All right, so we're back for match number 2. We are on the play. We decide to mulligan, or we actually decide to keep this hand, and I think it's more than defensible. So the reason we kept was because we have a Forest, and we had a Adventurous Impulse, along with an Explore. So we were 4 deep cards to find our second land. Hopefully it'll be a bounce land. We also have the Explore if we do find the second land. So I thought this hand was more than fine. We also have 2 Fiery Cannonades, and I feel like that card is pretty good in the meta. So we decided to keep. We lead with Forest and play Adventurous Impulse, which finds us a Forest. And then we go ahead and pass the turn. So our opponent plays a Forest and then plays a Nettle Sentinel. We play a Forest and then cast an Explore, which finds us another Adventurous Impulse. Our opponent gets in for 2. We take 2 down to 18, and then they play a Skargan Pit Skulk. So now we just need to find this mountain, and I think we're in just really good shape. We have a lot of good cards in this matchup. We find a Lightning Bolt. This Adventurous Impulse finds us a Forest. We put the Forest into play, and then go ahead and play Arboreal Grazer with no land to put it into play. And this kind of became a theme, is we just could not find red. There are, if you count, 4 Ash Barrens, this is 4 Gruul Turfs, which is 8, and then 1 mountain, which is 9. That number may have needed to be like 2 or 3 mountains. And yeah, at this point, he goes ahead and absolutely devastates us with Savage Swipe on the Arboreal Grazer on the Nettle Sentinel. Gets us for 6, and then he gets us for an extra 3 with the Howl of that, or Hunger of the Howl Pack on his Skargan Pit Skulk. So he attacked us for literally infinite. We redraw Golgari Rot Farm, have no castable spells in our hand, and pack it up for game number 2. All right, so for game number 2, we are on the play. So this is the hand where I immediately think, wow, why did I wish for more red sources? So here, again, this would be a hand that would be so good with a Forest instead of a mountain. But I think it's good enough that we still can't pass it. Like, we have a Boreal Grazer, we have Adventurous Impulse. The only issue is we have the 3 THICC boys. But, I mean, like, there's only 8 of them in the deck. I felt like we could maybe get our way out of this game. So, let's see what happens. We play our mountain on turn 1. And then we ship the turn. Our opponent has turn 1 Query and Ranger. Right, there it is. It's just a 1-mana 1/1. We draw another Gruul Turf, which is pretty decent for us. We return this mountain back to hand, and then we pass. He plays a Rancor on his Korean Ranger and gets in for 3, putting us down to 17. On our turn, we draw a Sakura Tribe Scout. We play Arboreal Grazer, play another Gruul Turf, return the mountain to our hand, and then ship. With every intention to block here. He plays another Rancor to go to a 5-1. He attacks in for 5, and at this point, I'm thinking, you know, it's going to be a 3 points of blocking anyways. May as well get it in there. So we cast Adventurous Impulse, get a THICC Rubble Fort, and then basic land cycle for a forest, and then play Sakura Tribe Scout. The problem here is that we're minimum 2 turns away from Annoyed Altisaur, and we're at 15. Against a deck like this, it's really not great. So he casts an Elephant Guide on his Korean Ranger, makes it an 8-4, and gets in for 8. Here, like, there's really no point to block. We're going to get in for maybe 1 damage, you know, so we go down to 7. We draw a card for the turn. It's an Explore. We play it. We draw Fiery Cannonade 1 turn too late. We play the Rubble Fort. He gets in for 8, and at this point, the reason I didn't block was, or the reason I double blocked is because if he has, there's Convoke +2/+2 for 1 green. I thought maybe he could have that. That would make a difference. I knew if he had Vines of Aswood, it wasn't going to make a difference. He had Vines of Aswood, obviously, and the game is over. Now, this is the kind of thing that's going to happen to these ramp decks, right? Like, this mono green deck is a finely tuned machine. It's built to aggressively go after these kind of slowish starting decks. Even with Fiery Cannonade, again, we did draw it 1 turn too late, and then we couldn't really cast it in our other games, but at any point, I think that this deck is still going to be good regardless of whether or not Fiery Cannonade is in the format. If there's going to be a deck that can leverage Fiery Cannonade, I feel like it's a deck like this or like a blue-red control deck. But these big green-red decks have, you know, historically in other formats loved a small sweeper. You know, you go back to like 2011, the World Championships, they were playing cards like Slagstorm were super good. And I think a Fiery Cannonade fits that role. It's just whether or not this green-red deck is good enough to compete with some of the top tier decks in the format, and unfortunately right now it's not looking like that, but maybe our tides are about to turn. How the turntables. Alright, so we're here for match number 3, game number 1. We lost the die roll, and we unfortunately can't keep that hand, we can't keep that hand, so we end up keeping Golgari Rod Farm, Forest, Gruul Turf, THICC Rubble Fort, and Annoyed Altisaur. So, you know, not looking great for the kid here, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So our opponent leads off on Swamp, which is automatically going to be a good sign for us because you have to imagine that that means he's on some sort of black deck. If it's a blue-black deck, he's probably going to have like a dual land come into play first. So we lead off with Adventurous Impulse, find ourselves a mountain. The nice thing about the bounce lands is they actually kind of function as mulligan, I guess, support in a way, in that they're double land drops. So here on turn 2, we actually have 2 really good draws. We have turn 1, Adventurous Impulse, which finds us a land, no big deal. But then we have Explore on turn 2, which draws us a card, allows us to kind of accelerate our mana a little bit, and then we can kind of start to get into these big Cascade boys and maybe make some headway against this black deck. The fact that he let off with double Swamp Sign in Blood also means that, you know, most likely he's going to be a base black, kind of mid-range removal heavy deck. So we ship the turn. And our opponent plays a mountain. So this shocks me a little bit, but again, probably just playing Fiery Cannonade or something. We play another Gruul Turf, pass the turn. We're more than content to just kind of sit here, develop our mana, keep cards in hand. Our opponent plays a land and then passes. We draw Sakura Tribe Scout. We go ahead and cast it. I mean, it's going to die, but we figure we may as well put it into play. It's going to make him waste maybe a Chainer's Edict. That's best case scenario. And sure enough, it eats a Chainer's Edict. So we're pretty happy about that. He then casts another Sign of Blood. Not so happy about that. Goes back up to 7 cards in hand. Our turn, we draw another Explore. Those are always going to be good for us into an Arboreal Grazer. Another card that's going to be great against this very heavy Chainer's Edict style deck when we're playing a bunch of big guys. So we put this mountain into play, and now we're pretty much ready to go. We're ready to play Annoyed Altisaur next turn. The reason I didn't play the THICC Rubble Fort earlier is basically because I wanted to hopefully play a big guy and Rubble Fort in the same turn. Because if I'm going to play Rubble Fort, if it gets back to his turn, the thing is most definitely going to die. So that was my theory. So he goes ahead and plays Cannon Fleet Commodore. It's a 5/2 trample that comes in play and gives you Monarch. And this was a card that I was, you know, kind of interested to see how it worked. He did get the Monarch. We were able to play the Annoyed Altisaur here, which cascaded into an Explore. Never going to be sad about that. We go ahead and just play another Forest and then ship the turn. But again, really happy that his Annoyed Altisaur, or his this isn't a Thorn of the Black Rose, just because it dies to Fiery Cannonade. So he gets in for 5. We go ahead and take it down to 15. And you'll see here now, with this THICC Rebel Fort, we're actually 1 land off from playing Annoyed Altisaur plus the Rebel Fort. Now, he does double Raven's Crime us, which is not the greatest thing in the world, and now he's at 6 cards. But, again, I've seen crazier things happen. We go ahead and play our Altisaur. See what we draw. And we put into play THICC Rebel Fort. So this is kind of the scenario I was trying to drop in my head, is if we can get this thing into play, attack with it, and then maybe get ourselves the Monarch, this is going to go a long way to beating maybe this Raven's Crime. I also don't understand, and then he actually wastes the Lightning Bolt on this Altisaur along with a Phyrexian Rager. We also get Monarch, so we're looking actually not bad here. He has 5 cards in hand. We have an 0-3 and an 0-3. We draw Maelstrom Colossus, which is huge. So on our opponent's turn, he Chainer's Edicts us, and we sacrifice the Arboreal Grazer. He gets in for 5. We're obviously not going to block because we need this THICC Rebel Fort. He's going to get the Monarch back. Play a Radiant Fountain, go up to 13. And then play a Sign of Blood to go down to 11. And then draw a card, so he's at 6 cards now. We untap, but he's unable to kill the Rebel Fort, which is huge here. So we go ahead and cast Maelstrom Colossus. And the Maelstrom Colossus is going to have haste, especially with only 2 red up. In our head, you know, he probably doesn't have double bolt or something like that. We go into Adventurous Impulse, never a bad card to play. Cast the Adventurous Impulse. It finds us an Aurochs Herd. So, again, really happy with the spot that we're in now, as next turn we get to play double Aurochs Herd. We're going to get in for 7 here. Putting him down to 4 and putting him into a really rough spot in terms of him having to deal with the Rebel Fort, and then we're going to have double Aurochs Herd next turn. We also get the Monarch back. We play our Gruul Turf, and then just return a Forest. End of turn, we're going to draw a card, and now we're kind of getting close to card parity. He has 6 cards, we have 4 cards. One of our cards draws us a card, so liking our spot. So here was an interesting little turn here. So I could have either blocked and only taken 2 and went to 8. Because if I don't block, he takes us to 5, and if he has double bolt, we're dead. But in my head is he has Chainer's Edict in the graveyard. He has 7 cards in hand. If he could kill this thing, and then, you know, he probably has another mountain in hand, we're probably dead, right? So if he had double bolt, we'd be dead anyways. He would just kill this, get in, you know, probably play something else. Like, we're so dead if he has double bolt. So in my head, I wanted to maximize the chance that we had to win, and that was in this spot going down to 5. So we take 5, he gets the Monarch back, and now second main phase, he goes ahead and casts a Gurmag Angler, plays a Bloodfell Caves, goes back up to 5, and then plays a Augur of Skulls, along with another Crimson Fleet Commodore. So we draw an Arboreal Grazer and play an Aurochs Herd, which lets us find another Aurochs Herd, which lets us find another Aurochs Herd. So again, we're liking the spot that we're in here, as we're playing a bunch of guys. The issue here, though, is whether or not I'm supposed to attack here. So if I attack with all of my creatures, he goes ahead and he blocks something on the 7/7 and then enough on the 5/4s that he's not going to die. But he does go to very, very low life total. If I leave my guys back, he has 4 cards in hand. He's going to be drawing more cards on his turn. You know, I wasn't exactly sure. He's going to have the Chainer's Edict if he wants it, which would most likely make me sack my THICC Rebel Fort. So in this spot, I just thought, you know what? We've been lucky all game. We got to put ourselves in a spot to win. Let's attack. So we go ahead and attack. Very worst case scenario, I get to double Aurochs Herd next turn anyways. So I felt good about that. So he goes to blocks. He blocks a Gurmag Angler on the 5/4, 5/2 on the 5/4, and then puts the 1/1 in front of the 7/7. We get our Monarch back. We draw an Arboreal Grazer. Not the greatest card in the world, but still not the worst. He gets in for 5. We do have to block here. Puts us to 3. And again, if he had the bolts, we were dead anyways. So I didn't feel too bad about this play. He then taps out for Chainer's Edict, which puts us down to no creatures. And then he, I think Raven's Crimes us here. Oh no, sorry, Duress to see a bunch of creatures. So the nice thing about this deck is it is pretty well Duress proof. We draw a Force for our turn. We go ahead and play 2 Aurochs here. Aurochs Herd number 1. We would like to use the ability. Gets us another Aurochs. And then we go ahead and play Aurochs number 2. Which unfortunately can't find us a 5th Aurochs Herd. Deck building mistake, unfortunately. And then we play an Arboreal Grazer, which lets us put a Forest into play. And now, again, we're set up next turn. He has to have something. He has a decent amount in the graveyard. Like, he has another Chainer's Edict, but Chainer's Edict costs 7 mana out of the graveyard. So I'm feeling okay. Not great. He has the Monarch still, but he really doesn't have any good attacks here. So, again, feeling pretty decent. So he flashes back the Chainer's Edict. I sacrifice the Arboreal Grazer, and he realizes that's it. 2 mana left. He has, 2, 4, 5 power trample guys with only 2 toughness, and we somehow win this game. He actually concedes the match. So I'm going to add one more match for you guys because this is only one game, but I wanted to show you that this deck can go up against a big, grindy, mid-range black deck, and with the power of Cascade, with the power of Aurochs Herd, power through and be able to create board states, beating a Monarch for a bunch of turns, beating a bunch of removal, beating 4 Chainer's Edicts, basically. So, happy with this, and yeah, let's go one more match, because it's pretty funny. Alright, so we're here for our last game, and this is kind of what I wanted to show you, because I thought it was so funny. So, with the prevalence of Fiery Cannonade, decks have tried to start to adapt to that, right? So this is game 2 of my 4th match that I played, that I recorded. Because game 1 was very similar to this match. So I just wanted to show you what happened here. So I keep a hand of, what I thought was fairly decent. I have Fiery Cannonade. I have this Mulch that ended up being good just because you'll see what kind of deck I'm playing against here in a second. I end up putting the Maelstrom Colossus back along with the Mulch. Or, yeah. And you lead off with a Mountain. My opponent leads off with an Island. Okay? End of turn, I cycle this Ash Barrens, go get a Forest on tap. Play this Arboreal Grazer we drew, play this Golgari Rot Farm, and I'm looking in what I thought pretty decent, right? I pass the turn, our opponent has an Island, and then plays an Evolving Wild, or a Brainstorm, then an Evolving Wild, so he's able to get the little legacy play of basically an Ancestral Recall. We draw a Lightning Bolt, so again, feeling pretty good. So for reference, our opponent in the first game played a bunch of Seeker of the Ways with Benevolent Bodyguards to kind of like protect himself from removal spells, along with a Vidoccan Outlander, which is blue-white for a 2/2 artifact creature with protection from red. That's it. Okay, so that card, he then put a Steel of the Godhead on, which is 2 blue-white hybrid. If the creature is blue, it gets +1/+1 and is unblockable, and if it's white, it gets +1/+1 and has lifelink. So, it's a little bit of caveat as to what's going to happen the rest of this game. So he leads off with a Benevolent Bodyguard. We figure if we're going to get anything with this Fiery Cannonade, this Benevolent Bodyguard needs to be off the table. So we go ahead and Lightning Bolt it. We untap for our turn, draw Forest. So, we're in an okay spot here. We draw land, we can Aurochs Herd. If not, hopefully we draw a spell we can cast. Our opponent then casts another Benevolent Bodyguard. So, again, not great for us. We draw an Aurochs Herd, probably the worst draw in our entire deck. Not great. And then our opponent casts Galena's Knight. Galena's Knight. White and a red for a 2/2 protection from red. So either this guy assumed that Fiery Cannonade would be the most played card in the format, or has lost the Fiery Cannonade 17 times already, and is like, you know what, screw this, I'm playing Galena's Knight, Vidoccan Outlander, Benevolent Bodyguard deck. And you know what? I'm into it, because it was hilarious. Yes, we draw Lightning Bolt, looks terrible, and then can you guess what he follows this up with? Oh, Steel of the Godhead. Very nice, very nice. 4/4 lifelink, protection from my deck. Ah, great, great. Can't be blocked. Very nice. Tuck Rubble Fort. Great, great, great. This is so ridiculous, and it's so funny that, like, I can see this deck being good. Like, if you go up against some sort of, like, these new red-blue control decks that people are playing, there's no reason why this deck can't be good, right? So we play this Aurochs Herd, it gets countered, and that's basically it. But I just wanted to show you the lengths that people are going to make sure they beat Fiery Cannonade. They're playing Galena's Knight. Galena's Knight. It's a Merfolk Knight. Maybe it's worth playing. Maybe we'll ask Nukichu if he wants to play this card. Anyways, that's going to do it for this week in terms of gameplay. I'm going to go into the conclusion, talk a little bit more about the deck, because I do think there's some good things. Definitely better than last week's deck. So let's get to that right now. Alright guys, well, we kind of had an okay week. So we started out pretty strong. We played against an Affinity style deck that we were able to take game 1 in. Our deck was kind of running at full power, and it looked really, really strong. We stumbled in games 2 and 3 against Affinity, again, just because I think you run into that classic ramp problem of either not enough lands, too many big guys, or too many ramp spells, not enough big guys, or too many big guys and too many removal spells, or not enough mana. Just kind of these weird things. When you don't have mana fixing, or when you don't have mana, or sorry, card selection in Pauper, you're really kind of left to kind of the mercy of your deck, whereas a deck like Affinity can do so much more on just limited land count. The fact that we need so much mana to do so many of our things makes it so, unfortunately, we kind of get stranded a little bit of the time. But in game 1 against Affinity, we saw how powerful this deck was. Match 2, a little bit different. We played against the Mono Green Stompy. That's the type of deck that's really going to punish this style of strategy. I'm happy we played against that deck because it showed us just the flaws in this kind of strategy, whereas something like normal Tron can have things like Moment's Peace and just a bunch of nonsense blockers to get in the way along with removal spells. We kind of don't really have that. We have a lot of stuff that is not going to be good in the early game with you know, our big thick boys, and we have a lot of stuff that's going to be bad in the late not going to be good in the early game, good in the late game, not going to be good in the late game, good in the early game. Things like Sakura Tribe Skeleton and Arboreal Grazer. Those things, the diminishing returns on those cards are very, very fast. Turn 3, turn 4, they're not going to be doing a lot. Turn 1, they're fantastic. Turn 4, they're basically worse than a land. So we were kind of exposed by that Mono Green Stompy deck, unfortunately. But you know what? I think there's things we can do at any point if we draw a red source in any of those games. I think we're in really good shape. We weren't able to do that. But, I mean, the cards fall where they may, and that's just kind of Magic the Gathering sometimes. Match 3 I showed you guys is because this deck does have the ability to grind. The fact that our big guys have Cascade makes it so we can go up against these black-based mid-range removal-heavy decks and, you know, not necessarily succeed, but put up a fight. We mulled to 5. Our opponent didn't have the greatest draw, but we were able to go toe-to-toe with them, back and forth, and we have this explosive ability to just attack for a bunch of damage out of nowhere with Tuck Rubble Fort, that there's definitely something there. Our opponent conceded, but I do think that it was important for you guys to see that this deck can go long with a deck packed with removal and still be okay. A lot of the time, especially in other formats where there's more powerful threats, a removal-heavy kind of mid-rangey Jund-style deck, yeah, you're going to fold to Tron going late. You're going to fold to these control decks with these big plays late. In Pauper, that doesn't really happen because the big plays late aren't impactful enough to kind of decel from what they were doing earlier in the game. Whereas now, with Annoyed Altisaur and Maelstrom Colossus, I think we're well on our way to seeing these late-game threats that can be good and that can pull you back into games that you really had no business winning in the present. And finally, I love that we played against this blue-white not gonna lose the Fiery Cannonade deck. I thought that was hilarious. Galena's Knight. We also played against Vidok and Outlander in that deck, which is the exact same card, but it's an artifact. So funny. Maybe not the most relevant, but it was very, very funny to show you just how the lengths that people are going to beat this Fiery Cannonade card. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. Like I said, all my audio corrupted when I went to go and kind of do the editing on Monday. So unfortunately, we weren't able to go live games, but next week is going to be live games. So if you're excited for that, make sure you go ahead and watch next week on Thursday. Also, make sure to comment down below on your current favorite Pauper deck to get you an entry into winning either Insectile Aberration or Delver Secrets or Insectile Aberration. These two prints are going to be getting auctioned off, or not auctioned off, sorry, raffled off on episode 5 of Pauper Ponderings. So this is episode 3 right now. Not next week, the week after that, we're going to be announcing the 2 winners. You have to be in North America to do it. Unfortunately, with COVID, it's really difficult to ship stuff internationally, or outside of US and Canada. It's very difficult for me to ship stuff right now. So again, thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, please like, please subscribe to my channel. And yeah, we'll see you next Thursday.